What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Crypto Cheat Sheet Live. We're coming to you today on March the 15th, 2018. This is a show where we get together weekly to break down the latest in crypto so that you don't have to. My name is Brad. I'm joined by my co-host Trey, as usual. Trey, go Vols. Big win today.
That was a lot of fun. Let's keep that tourney run alive.
Gotta keep it going.
Something to root for since crypto doesn't want to do anything for us.
Yeah, that's true. So, got some feedback on the show, and we are going to switch it up a little bit. So this week we're going to do a couple different shows. We're going to split out the news and the markets into two different shows and try to break them down, make them a little shorter for everyone. So this is going to be our news segment. We got a couple things we want to talk about here. We were delayed a little bit, some technical difficulties, but we're back. We got some sweet new mics, so we should sound really good this week. Let's kick it off. We'll start today with some news that's a little bit over a week old, but we haven't talked about it yet. I think it's something that we should address with everyone. And this is the story of MT Gox, the trustee in the bankruptcy case there. It came out that they had sold, it was, I guess, 43 billion Japanese yen. Japanese yen or yuan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Japanese currency to cover their bankruptcy. And there was a lot of speculation that this was, this is what drug the market down. What are your thoughts on that?
The fact that let's talk about it in dollars. It's about $400 million worth of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And the fact that this trustee just market sold it on exchanges kind of blows my mind. I do think it's key to hit the fact that, we're talking about 36,000 Bitcoins here. Dumping those is not the reason for the dump. It's a convenient storyline. Human nature, we want to attribute why something happened. Price moved down because we rejected off of a really key level, which was 12K. It's not because someone sold 35,000 Bitcoins. But the fact that this guy, and I don't know what authority he had, that's what I'd love to know, that said, hey, go market sell X amount of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash on the market to cover what we're going to owe in fiat currency to the creditors or the debtors. And
it is the yen, by the way.
It is the yen. But I mean, honestly, it blows my mind. Like, as we sold to U.S. Marshals auctions back in 2014, there's a way to maximize returns, and it's not market selling and crashing the market, especially when you still hold another 160,000 Bitcoins, and I would assume an equal amount of Bitcoin Cash as well. So, it's just odd to me, very odd that whose authority was he acting on? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But
yeah.
Something I'd like to get your thoughts on. Last week we also saw a record high contract holder on OKCoin, and very conveniently that number has decreased as this price has dropped from 12 to 8K. We've never seen anything close to the amount of contracts he had open. So again, don't want to try and get into conspiracy theories, but seems awfully convenient that there was a massive short, it seems, taken out at the same time someone was market selling 40,000 Bitcoins.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, you never know, but I mean, certainly if you had the knowledge that you were going to unload 35,000 Bitcoin Cash, you just happen to tell, a friend of a friend that if you were to short here, it wouldn't be a terrible idea. It wouldn't surprise me, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that stuff happens in the regular markets, and those are regulated. And this is a this is a super unregulated market. I mean, it just wouldn't surprise me one bit if that happened. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
it's.
kind
I was just gonna say it. Back to your point, like why market sell? I mean, there's a ton of different ways you can do this. You can auction. We've seen that. It's just an odd thing to happen. You can OTC it. There's plenty of miners out there that have got a ton of Bitcoin to sell. That's just odd.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say about that, let's just assume for a second that was one person that somehow had inside information. It seems odd that you'd be that blatant about it. Like, someone who has the kind of resources to short that amount, you would think they'd also have access to breaking that short up into multiple accounts where you don't pop on any radars. So I don't know. To your point, it's very odd.
Well, it may have been something that just leaked, and multiple people knew about it, and it got into some people that didn't give a shit, and they were like, "Well, I'm just gonna put it out there."
Yeah, and to your point, it is an unregulated market, and as of now, like there's no one that's going to go after someone like that. Now, I do think there's the potential of like people who are blatantly market manipulating and fraudulently making trades like this. The SEC has shown in the past that they're not afraid to like go back in time and say this is very clear this happened, this is why, and then hand down punishment for that. But I don't know, it just all seemed awfully convenient, and the way that they went about this just blows my mind. You're on Twitter, you've seen like the market's reaction to this was like, how dumb can this guy be? And even Mark Karpeles, who I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but clearly
I think I have his post here. He's Magical Tux on Reddit.
Yeah, and to his point, like he's certainly not the beacon of reliability or anything. There's a reason why Mt. Gox crashed, and he had a large part in that. But he even advised them, like, guys, auction this or sell it over the counter. There are people who want this amount of Bitcoin. Maximize your price. So let's just assume between 12 and 8, they sold that entire 40, and let's split the difference and say they sold it at 10. They could have sold the entire 40 at 12. Instead, they got an average at 10.
Yeah.
And now they've lost, approximately 20% of the money they could have made from that sale.
There's the interesting rub here is that Mark Karpeles, and I don't know, I'm not a bankruptcy attorney, but what I've read about bankruptcy law in Japan is that there's a potential that the rest of this Bitcoin is going to go to him.
Yeah,
because they liquidated they liquidated enough to cover the debts that were owed in the bankruptcy. And so the question now is, what do you do with the rest of the money? And so Japanese law says it goes back to the owners of the company, which in this case is Mark Karpeles. So,
which blows my mind. There's this tweet here this guy sent out that, I mean, it's actually hysterical. He said summer 2011, Bitcoin collapsed because of a hacks at Mt. Gox from $32 to pennies. Early 2013, Bitcoin collapsed from $260 to $50 due to Mt. Gox servers failing. 2014, Bitcoin collapsed from 1K to 200 because of Gox lying about being hacked. 2018, Bitcoin collapses from 20K to 5K due to Gox selling. And it's like, at what point are these people who clearly are not cut out to be running an exchange or even functioning in any kind of fiduciary role, when do they get cut out of this? Because let's just say the crash was because of that. Kind of sad if that's the case.
And he's gonna walk away with 160,000 Bitcoin and 160,000 Bitcoin cash. Like, give me a break.
That's a lot of money for somebody who is clearly incompetent.
Oh, well, speaking of incompetence, I think we got a good segue to our next story here, which is related to, I think we just want to talk about regulation in general with the second segment. We've had over the past, week and a half, we've had the CFTC chair come out and talk about what they feel their role is in regulating crypto. We've had there was the Senate hearings yesterday, I believe that was, where they spent a day, had various people report to Congress. We've had different organizations come out and talk about their role in regulating crypto, and it's we've seen CFTC, we've seen SEC, we've seen
Treasury, IRS.
Treasury. Oh yeah, the IRS. Everybody's kind of got their own hold on the different part of crypto, and to some degree, I think that makes sense. But I know you watched a lot of the hearings yesterday. What were your takeaways from that?
Well, to your point, the biggest I think the common theme of it was who actually is going to be the regulatory body responsible for Bitcoin, and I don't think they know yet. Like, clearly the CFTC has kind of staked their claim, and from what we've seen from Chairman Giancarlo, like, I'm okay with that. He seems very progressive thinking, seems open to where we're going, and seems to have zero interest in like over regulating. But you still have the SEC who's saying these are all securities. The IRS is saying this is property. You have the Treasury saying it's a currency, and now you have the CFTC saying it's a commodity. So sure, it has characteristics that allow all these potential regulatory bodies to say it falls in our zone. But clearly, if we have to rely on all of these departments to create regulation, it's going to take forever, and there's never going to be anything done that works for everybody. It would just really be a zoo. I think one of the bigger takeaways as well from this is you see this guy, Brad Sherman out of California, who, complete mathlete, obviously. The dude, multi-time congressman, and his comments on Bitcoin, like, could not have been less informed. He started it by saying Bitcoin is basically just something where a dozen or so guys in my district sit around their house in pajamas and tell their wives they're going to be rich someday. And so, clear lack of understanding of what it is. There may be some guys doing that, but there's also actual work being done and innovation that will come from it. Then he goes on to say that the only use cases for cryptocurrencies are laundering money, evading taxes, and funding terrorism. And it's like, dude, the US dollar is clearly the go-to for anybody doing any of those activities. And so to try and pin that all on cryptocurrencies, it's just a lazy way out. It's someone who hasn't done any research. And I think he was somewhat put in his place. It's tough to put a congressman in his place when you're a witness that they've called in to talk about this. But Van Valkenburg did a fantastic job. Yeah. He works with Coin Center, and for those of y'all who don't know, Coin Center is a not-for-profit that spends their entire goal is to basically help and guide and lobby regulators to create efficient and correct regulations in the space. So, and on the other side of it, you had Tom Emmer from Minnesota, who could not have been more forward thinking. I would vote for that guy for president tomorrow. Just hearing what he said, it was basically look, I sit here and listen to all my fellow congressmen trying to say, we need to hurry up and regulate this. And he's like, we don't need to jump in and regulate everything that comes along. Sure, there's some stuff we probably need to look into and take care of here, but to just jump in and paralyze a potential new and powerful innovation by over-regulating it could not be a worse idea. And on top of that, the US will fall behind if we try and become this staunch regulated industry and don't allow these people who are creating new things to do what they do. So it was fascinating to watch, and yeah, I saw both sides of it there.
You think about it, it's especially when you're talking about over regulation. If you think about, if regulation would have come out strong in 2014, it was just Bitcoin and some altcoins that were basically just standard proof of work knockoffs of Bitcoin. That's all there was in the market at the time.
Yep.
If you would have regulated based on that, and now you'd be sitting here, 3-4 years later, and it's completely different. Now you've got Ethereum and you got ICOs, and you're, everyone's moving towards on-chain governance, and it's a completely different landscape. You would have had to take that regulation or whatever you decided at the time and change it. A law is supposed to be something that's in stone and it doesn't change over time. So, I think the prudent thing to do for them is to wait and see how this thing matures. Don't overregulate it. Let it grow. Let it see what comes of it. Now, I think the SEC is doing the right thing in terms of going after some of these blatant scam ICOs. I think that makes sense. Like, I don't think anybody in the space wants, tons of, complete Ponzi schemes and ripoffs and people just doing ICOs and taking people's money and running away with it. Nobody wants that. But we don't want that. We don't want that to, taint the image of the projects that are actually doing real things and the people that are actually doing real work in the space. So, if they can come in and clean up some of the low-hanging fruit, some of the trash out there that's ripping people off, then that's okay. I think as long as they take a tactful approach to it, I think some of that can be good. I don't think coming in and just shutting the whole thing down is a good idea, or would be beneficial to anyone.
Yeah, and to that point, a tweet here, and this wasn't from that hearing, but it was from another speaking engagement that Emmer was a part of, and he said, if our government decides to impose its vision on what the future of innovation looks like for this technology, that's when America loses. And honestly, that's so forward thinking that it almost gives you a little faith in government again, but it's one of hundreds. I would say the majority don't fall where he's at, but he's correct in that. Like, let's see what happens. And Peter Van Valkenburg made a really good point. Like, let's quit trying to regulate at the state level, the federal level, and the global level, because when you look at what happens with that, all of a sudden a company like Gemini is now basically redoing the same work over and over and over again, and it becomes redundant. I can't think of the guy's first name, but I think his last name was Limmers, and he was from Coinbase, and he was one of the witnesses there. And they asked, how much they were paying attention to. They asked how much they were paying attention to, staying in compliance. And he was like, well, I'll tell you right now, 20% of our paid staff is in compliance. And several of the senators were aghast at that. Like, you're telling me that 1/5 of your payroll is only there to comply with regulations. And, it's great to hear that. And it's great for those.
Stifles innovation. Like, that company's spending way too much money on compliance. It makes no sense.
20% of their budget. I mean, that's
crazy. They're making plenty of money, but still, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and to that point, if you are having to spend basically 20% of every day redoing the same stuff over and over again, which is what we're talking about when you have to do it at the state level, the federal level, and then at the global level, it's redundant. It's ridiculous. And that's what Van Valkenburg was saying. Let's come up with some universal global KYC AML stuff that, if that's the biggest concern and money laundering is the biggest concern, everyone can adopt those one time and fine, we'll move on from there. And I agree with that.
Yeah, that's old. That's old laws that just don't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, that's why Robinhood can only roll out in 5 states to start with, and they're having to go slow, and it stifles competition. I mean, there would be way more fiat on-ramps if you didn't have to go state by state and become a money transmitter. I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you want to cover there? I'm sure we'll hit on this topic again and again as it kind of unfolds.
No, I will say in summary, I do agree that there's some regulation necessary to get rid of like Steven Seagal's coming out with Bitcoin 2. It's going to be the next Bitcoin. People would have lost their ass on that because, hey, Steven Seagal's a movie actor, a superstar. Yeah. He's not going to lie to me. Well, guess what? That was never going to go anywhere. So there needs, that got shut down. There was a cease and desist sent. ICOs like that need to be shut down. But in general, this new way to raise capital and find vibrant sources of capital to fund potentially world-altering projects is something that should not be shut down. I mean, it's fantastic to watch.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, let's shut this down. Let me touch on a couple things. One, visit our website, thecryptocheatsheet.com. Follow us on Twitter at thecryptocs. We got a Telegram group. You can find that on our website. Join us in conversation. Trey's in there ripping charts all day. I just chime in when I can. And support our partner Moonware at moonware.com. That's MEWNWEAR.com. We got crypto swag. Trey's got a hat on.
Got a shirt on. Check it out. My buddy Collins group, Gambit Crypto.
Pretty cool. All kinds of stuff for sale there. All right. See y'all.